Montreal Sports Radio, TSN 690.
Welcome back to Game Night OT. I'm your host, Matthew Ross. Marco Polo on the board. Stefano Micella in studio as well. We're here till the top of the hour, and then my show, GamePoints, will take you until 1 a.m. Right now, it's time to talk a little NBA, and we're very pleased to welcome to the program former NBA coach with the Toronto Raptors. You can follow him on twitter.com/TO Butch Carter. It is Butch Carter. Hey, Butch, how you doing?
Good. How are you this evening?
Very good. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, thanks for asking.
Well, let's talk some NBA here. Now, the first topic I want to get to here on the program, I'm not a huge Pistons fan, nor am I a big Mo Cheeks guy, but seemed to me, based on the roster that the Pistons currently have, that you really couldn't fault him all that much for their current record. What was your take on them getting rid of him?
Well, I thought Mo was not the best hire for them to start out with, because what people forget is it takes a different kind of personality to coach your way out of a team that is historically lost. You have an owner there new to the basketball business. He did not allow his GM to hire Lawrence Frank. He hired Lawrence Frank over Mike Woodson because Lawrence came in and gave him a presentation the way they're used to seeing as private equity investors, notebooks and notebooks of his playing offensively and defensively. And, you know, what they didn't realize, as I've said, is professional basketball is half Harvard and half Harlem. And they took a guy who they perceived to represent their Harvard side and didn't understand that no one in the locker room could translate what he was saying. So Lawrence Frank set the thing up to go very bad. Mo Cheeks, one of the better human beings that's ever played in the NBA besides his basketball talent, I didn't think would be tough enough or organized enough to handle that bad situation. I thought he would get through this year, but they shot him early.
All right, sticking with that Central Division in the Eastern Conference, to me, the Indiana Pacers may even be the favorites coming out of that conference. I know Miami's got the rings, but what is your take on the Pacers? Should they be considered the favorites now in the East based on that 40-11 record right now, or do you still got to go through the Heat?
Well, the Heat still have the belt, and I think in the minds of, you know, who I think is really important, the officials and everyone else, Indiana's earned the right to get a ring with them. As long as they don't stumble in the playoffs. Chicago is not going to be easy, whoever gets matched up with Chicago, because Coach Thibodeau just does a fantastic job. They got a good win they needed to get tonight at home against Atlanta, coming back off their long West Coast trip. But Indiana's a very, very good team. They have established home court advantage. Their home court will be noisy and loud. Miami has struggled to play there and play well. They've only played well and won when Chris Bosh was exceptional. And I don't know if Chris is up to that this year. None of us do. Wade and LeBron are going to be themselves. But historically, to beat the Pacers, Bosh needs to play very well. So I think the Heat are the champs until they get knocked off. And I think that Indiana has deserved the right to put themselves in position to knock them off.
Chatting with Butch Carter, former NBA coach, T.O. Butch Carter on twitter.com, butchcarter.ca as well. Looking at the Bosch's former team, the Toronto Raptors, they're in first place right now in a not so competitive Atlantic Division, but you can't take that away from them right now. They're over 500 and an over 500 conference record as well, so not just within the division. Your thoughts on what you're seeing right now from the Raptors, because at this point they'd be the number 3 seed in the East, which certainly is surprising to many.
Well, I think, again, Toronto is one of the biggest surprises in the NBA. I think Toronto, Phoenix, and Portland are the 3 teams that people did not picture to be in the top 5 or 6 in what they were doing. I think that after the trade, the team became more efficient. Toronto, I think, is second or third best shooting team as far as making open shots, making mid-range jump shots in the NBA. They are going through a period of injury right now. They're a little dysfunctional because of those injuries. First, it was the ankle sprain. Hansborough's been out. They've been able to hold on, but I think they need to race and get to 40 wins as soon as possible. That would be, my goal if I was talking to them. Let's get to 40 wins so that we can determine our playoff destiny. The race is closer than I thought. I looked at the standings before I came on tonight. If they go where, especially because they have the Raptors have a very favorable schedule in the year. They've gone through their West Coast trips. I think they only have to go to Minnesota. That's all they have left on the West Coast. They have a very favorable schedule. Charlotte is playing very well. Washington's playing better. Cleveland's playing better. But I think they just need to handle their own business. Brooklyn, because of the 3 older players that they acquired from Boston, I don't believe is going to exert a lot of energy. They'll be good some nights, but they're not going to be great every night because of the age of that team. The Raptors right now have made a case for them getting a high seed in the East, and they need to continue that so that can happen.
Now, as a former NBA coach, you talked a couple of times there about the West Coast swings. Talk to us a little bit about what that does on a team in terms of fatigue, jet lag, balancing practice schedule, all that kind of stuff. It is really a disadvantage if you have those kind of swings down the stretch as opposed to earlier in the year?
Well, it's not just you're going west, but you're also a lot of times flying in a lot of good weather. So you're going out to play against good teams. Mentally, the guys are involved in better weather than they're used to at home because of the cold. And then you have this transition. If you stay out there longer than 6 days, 5 or 6 days, the best scenario is always not to fly back on the red eye. A perfect example is the Raptors spent the night after their game with the Clippers, did not fly red eye, flew back the next day, had a nice practice on Saturday, which allowed them to get back into a normal rhythm, and they won a very important game against New Orleans at home that they needed to win. That is the right way to do it. Historically, you see teams where they've taken the red eye back and just got the guys' mental clocks all torn up. Then they get back, they sleep in, then they've got to open up all their mail, then they got a bunch of stuff, the guys are married on the honey-do list, and the last thing they get to think about is when they walk in that gym for that first game. And historically, it turns out pretty bad. I think the Raptors franchise history are like 10-21 that first game back. They'd be 11-21 since they beat New Orleans. But it's just tough. It's very, very tough for a coach to handle. The toughest games on the schedule are those first games back from the West Coast trip.
Butch Carter here on Game Night OT. One more team to address in that division. You mentioned Boston. I'm quite partial to the Celtics, but I got to get your thoughts on this franchise in terms of Rajon Rondo and what they do with this guy. I love him. I think he's a keeper, but they got a youth movement going there, and there's thought that maybe you do move him out. Where do you weigh in on what to do with Rondo? It's hard. To me, you can't replace a guy that size that can rebound like that at the guard position.
Well, the problem with Rajon is we all don't know if he's healthy yet. Right? I mean, it's a different story if you know, but his knee got sore, and they've gone to where he sat out a game, or he may sit out 2 because his knee got sore. So the reality is he has this year and next year on a contract. I think and even if you wanted to keep him, you can't really make a decision because if you're keeping him, you got to extend him. And if you're going to extend him, where are you going to extend him at? I mean, there are point guards a lot worse than him that got 10 million averages this past summer. So I think that me make with Rajon is over the summer, get through the rest of the season, see how his knee holds up. Someone will offer them something good for Rajon. I think it's very hard to go backward. And for all those teams who historically have gone backward and not just been lucky to get a Tim Duncan, it's been hard to put a franchise back together.
Yeah.
He is one of the more dynamic players in the league, regardless of position. He is so competitive. He rebounds the basketball. Not the greatest shooter, distributes the ball, and just his overall mental toughness. Definitely, he's been developing in Boston. It would be nice, but I think you don't decide anything until you know exactly where everybody's at as far as his injury and how that injury reflects into a new contract.
He is the former head coach of the Toronto Raptors. You can follow him on twitter.com/TO Butch Carter or check out butchcarter.ca as well. Butch, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. This is your first time on Montreal radio?
First time on Montreal radio. You know, the PK does a Toronto Carter, Bill Alouettes.
Oh, very nice. That's true. That's your. I totally forgot about that. That's right. You got your nephew here.
Yep.
Very cool. Thanks so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care.
All right, there you go. Butch Carter, of course, as we mentioned, the brother of Chris Carter, former Vikings great, and the uncle of Duron Carter with your Montreal Alouettes. How about that? Go Alouettes from Butch Carter. Very nice.
Quite an impressive family.
Not bad, huh?